This is the Math of War, and today we're going to explore the concept of a no-reply zone, specifically a type of no-reply zone based on relative position and traverse. Our scenario poses an elf ship against an orc ship. We assume that elves and orcs are equivalent in every fighting dimension except for the traverse of crossbows mounted on their respective ships. Isolating this one variable lets us more easily extract the principles to be discovered. Let's begin by imagining that the elf ship carries crossbows that are mounted so that they can swivel. However, they cannot swivel 360 degrees because they are mounted on one side of the ship and designed to only point out from the ship rather than into the ship. This partial swiveling leaves a traverse, meaning the total arc of motion available for swiveling the gun, of about 90 degrees. Thus, for instance, the elf crossbow can be brought to bear on any target within that 90-degree arc, but not at any target outside of the arc. Let's also imagine that the orc ship also carries mounted crossbows, but the traverse for their crossbows is only about 30 degrees. When the two ships are directly across from each other, both sides can strike the other side of the ship. But let's zoom out and see what happens once the ships move. Let's imagine the elf ship moves northward and the orc ship moves southward. After the ships have traveled this distance in opposite directions, the elves can still turn their crossbows sufficiently to target the orc ship. But notice that the orc crossbows, having a more limited traverse, are not able to return fire. The elf ship is now at an angle relative to the orc ship, such that the elf ship is beyond the 30-degree arc of motion available to the orc crossbows. Thus, from this position, the elves can rain projectiles down on the orcs without fear of receiving any such fire. The orcs will, of course, eventually be able to turn their entire ship, so that even if they can't turn their crossbows any further, turning the ship as a whole can bring the crossbows to bear on the elven ship. However, turning a ship takes time, and during that process, the elves will continue to fire away without risk of reprisal. If the elf fire is severe enough during the interim, there may be no one left to turn the ship or no ship left to turn. Note that if the orc crossbow is mounted in a castle, for instance, rather than on a vehicle, then of course turning the land itself is not possible, so there will be no way for the orcs to correct for the limited traverse of their crossbows other than simply dismounting the crossbows. What can we take away from this illustration? In other videos, we have addressed the concept of what we called a no-reply zone. We've seen, for instance, a no-reply zone based on differences in range. In today's video, we've now gotten to see an instance of a no-reply zone resulting from differences in traverse. Specifically, a traverse no-reply zone is a position of one adversary relative to another in which position one side's weapons can strike and the other side's weapons cannot. From this observation, we can extract a decision-making tool or a mental machine as elsewhere in the Math of War series. Situating in a traverse no-reply zone enables the traverse superior side to strike with impunity. Let's quickly consider a couple of the implications of what we've learned today. The side with greater traverse will seek to maximize the usefulness of this advantage. The sooner they can maneuver into a no-reply zone, and the longer they can maintain that relative position, the more they can avoid taking losses on their side while steadily inflicting losses on the other side. Meanwhile, the side who is at a traverse disadvantage will seek to avoid getting into the no-reply zone in the first place or to escape from it as soon as possible. If the weapons with limited traverse are mounted in a vehicle or other mobile platform, moving the platform itself to compensate for the lack of traverse of the weapon is probably the quickest remedy. But if the weapon is mounted in a fixed position, like in a trench or a fortification, such that no turning of the platform is possible, then there may be no clear remedy for the limited traverse. Dismounting the weapon altogether, which could take some considerable time, might be the only way to get that asset into play. But whether in a fixed position or in a vehicle, the traverse inferior side is at risk of taking unlimited losses without being able to inflict any losses on the other side if they remain in the no-reply zone long enough. We'll have to save further discussion of other implications of limited traverse for another video, but please take a moment to send me any responses you may have to this video in the comments section below, and I will see you in another installment of The Math of War.